So, hello, my ambitious besties. I'm super excited. We are here today. This is our first official episode of Virgo Ambition, and I cannot think of a better person to have as my first guest. I'm excited to talk about her journey. I'm excited to talk about how we actually have learned to learn each other, experience different things in our career and journey together, our love life together. I think she is a powerhouse. I think you're going to learn a lot from her today. I think she's going to drop some gems for you. But outside of that, I just adore her. And I think that she is a powerhouse. We'll talk about in my journey. I don't have children. I'm not married, but I do want to have children. And I'm thinking about that soon. And I want to have a daughter. And when I think about the attributes of a daughter, I think Jessika is just phenomenal. So I would be so blessed to be able to have a daughter like her in my future. So I am excited to welcome to our conversation this, back room, deep conversation. We're talking about, think about it like you go home and you take your bra off and you have some wine and you're like, okay, let's get to the real of it. That's what we're going to do today. And she's the best to do it with. Myself and Jessika Banks, she got the Banks, actually met a few years ago at an enterprise that we worked together. And she came in and our mutual friend said, hey, there's this vivacious young lady that's coming, and I would love for you to be able to mentor her or build a friendship with her or just be able to be there for her and kind of protect her as she matriculates through her journey. And from there, we've built a rapport and a friendship and shared a lot more than the stories of being a Black girly in corporate America. So outside of that, she is a powerhouse. She's going to introduce herself and talk about what she's doing and why she's here today. But what I want you to be able to take away from this conversation is that, there are different perspectives and different ways that you can look at things. There's an intersectionality of understanding how you build relationships, mend relationships, create new relationships, and then make sure that you're also staying within your purpose. And I think that she has a lot of jewels, like I said, to drop. So Jessika, welcome to Virgo Ambition. I am so excited that you're here. Can you tell our best friends a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Well, first off, you already introduced me with such a glowing and I feel like heartfelt. I'm like, pour the wine right now. The wine cart's right behind me. Let me get my tissues already prepped. I should have had this already prepped before we started, but no, thank you, Amber, for inviting me. It's such a special occasion to be not just invited in something that is your passion work, and your purpose, but also invited to the very first one. So I'm here to celebrate with you all and to tell you a little bit more about myself. It's really interesting when you say like I have a lot of gems, because I would say at this point in my life, I'm a young 20 something only for a few more months. And it is a very strong time of transition for me. And it's almost this time period where you look up and you're like, wait, I know I have all these accolades from working in corporate America. I'm a senior leader right now in my division at a digital bank. And did I ever think that I would see myself working in, banking? Did I ever see myself in financial services at all? Absolutely not. But now I have some gems that maybe I can offer some others. So aside from my life, being in corporate America and of course meeting other leaders like yourself, Amber, I am an avid person who believes in de-stressing and letting go of all of the weight that our shoulders carry when we clock out virtually from that 9 to 5 on our laptops every day. And so the best way that I do that is I work out all the time. I am a ClassPass junkie. So right now my obsessions are solid core. I actually just did something crazy in this period of transition, and I signed up for a 15K February 11th.
Awesome.
Now my besties, all of us together, are accountability partners. I have to do it. So that's my way of outside of work, just like letting go of all of the stress and that weight is working out and treating my body nicely. I am originally from South Carolina, so my family, my roots are still there in South Carolina. Every holiday, that's where I travel to. However, now I find myself in DC and have been for the past 5 years. It's crazy as a military brat to now have a place where I'm like, no, this is my city. I'm a resident. I have my stripes. I've earned them. And I just love it. I love everything that this city has to offer for young professionals and the networks and connections you can build. And it also is amazing for a foodie like me to have somewhere to go to spend my money every day if I want to. That's just a few steps down the street. So that's a little bit about me. I'm happy to dig in on anything else.
So let's go right for it. I think about your journey, even saying that, you found your home in DC. I remember when you went to New York, and I lovingly say for a hot second, because then I looked up and I was like, is Jessika not in New York anymore? You're like, girl, I moved back to DC. Like,
I said 5 years and I did not bring up Manhattan.
No, you were like, I had to go. But what I love about that is the fact that you experienced something different. A lot of times, especially when it comes to our careers and things like that, people are afraid to move. People are afraid to make a change, especially when you come from like a city, like, you move from DC to New York. DC itself is hustling and bustling, and most people are like, I'll never leave. But you gave that a chance and an opportunity. Can you talk about, number one, what was within you to say, I'm going to take a chance. I'm going to dip my toe in the water and try something else like New York, which is such a large city and such a different culture, I think. And then number two, like, what was the trigger point where you're like, I tried this, but I'm going to go back?
Yeah. It's a great question, and one that makes me dig deep back into some feelings of trauma. No, I think that, growing up military, right? I moved around like every 2 or 3 years of my life.
Yeah.
So if you think about a young girl in that situation, she's got to arm herself with the weaponry that enables her to, like, infiltrate any playground, be the cool girl, be the smart girl. And in the military, you have a lot of diverse families. So their children tend to be like, I remember growing up with people that were from California and Guam and, Illinois, and we all found ourselves in Germany together, right? And also growing up biracial, I'm not just biracial, I'm bicultural. So my mother is German, and I think about those skills and tools that I had to bolster growing up so that I could mentally manage moving from place to place so frequently, but making myself comfortable and being a chameleon in order to just make friends. When I think about that young girl and now who I am, as still a young woman, those same skills prove themselves, and it almost creates an itch. Like every 2 or 3 years, I'm always like, okay, what's next?
Yes.
What's different? How do I shake up my own comfort to not just challenge myself, but experience something new? Because I never want to be stagnant, and that's never how I grew up. And so the proposition of moving to New York, when the opportunity came my way, one, it was always something like, if I imagine that young girl on the playground, right, overseas, and I'm like, what is my future? I always, and this, I don't think I've told anyone, I've always saw myself like working for like Cosmopolitan, like going to buildings, in like New York City. And I wanted nothing to do with my small town where we ended up settling in South Carolina. And so when the opportunity came about, it was like, this is perfect. This is on my, 5-year plan. It's the cookie cutter journey. And it was the one thing that I felt like, if I can do this, I'll make myself proud and I'll prove it to all of them, right? That I could make it happen without being this person that had all of these roots and strongholds of connections and networks in the US, because I never had that growing up. So that's why when New York came up, I was like, absolutely. So you can see how it's like, I wasn't scared to do it.
Mhm.
I was more like, oh, finally. And it was the perfect shakeup that I said, like, I needed to kind of scratch that itch that I have every 2 or 3 years.
I think so when I think about the every 2 to 3 years and we talk about our similarities, right? I know a lot of times when I accomplish something, I think it's very similar for you, it's like, okay, but what's next?
Yes.
What's next, right? And a part of that in our conversations that we've had before is actually sitting in the success. And
Mhm.
we don't allow ourselves to do that. It's what's next? What can I check off? We're goal oriented. How do we make this work? How do we, to your point, what's the next accolade? What's the next goal that we can crush? And, for our best friends out there, what I would say, a part of that, especially when you're ambitious, like ourselves, is that you do have to enjoy the journey because the journey is that in between space, right? It's from the idea to the execution.
Mhm.
And we don't do that very well. So I'm excited to be able to hear you specifically say, I wanted to try it. I went, I understood and learned within that journey. And I learned like this isn't for me, but that was that growth. And you said, well, I'm going to go back too. But there was also a theme and a thread I wanted to pull out about you being kind of the military brat and being biracial. And I think, that's a whole nother conversation for a whole nother day. But, it specifically touches me because I've talked about having a child and, over the next year or so, and I don't know what the Lord has for me, but I'll probably give it a go by myself. And
Mhm.
so, with that, knowing that I'll do a journey of IVF and things like that, and go to the sperm bank, and I'm going to pull out my little book and pick out some sperm. But we know that there's not a lot of samples when it comes to specifically Black males. And I
Right.
think we talked about that. I think it's been in the news when DeBrat was having children and things like that about it. And knowing that it's probably about a 99% chance that my sample is going to be of a white man. And
Mhm.
understanding that, I'm purposefully bringing a child into this world and my child is going to be biracial. And what does that look like? So I would love to like kind of unpack
Mm.
journey, I think, in the future with you. But it's not a one for one, but I think there is something about what you said being a military kid. It's almost becoming a chameleon,
Yeah.
understanding the environment that you're in, understanding the audience. And I think that's something that I always had to do. I'm not a military brat, but I was a suburbanite, right? A suburban Black girl. And understanding that to me, I showed up a little bit different and understanding the spaces that I was in. And so I think there is some juxtaposition that we can do there. So I 100% understand how you feel. But I think that also brings us to the conversational point of how you show up as an adult. So knowing that as a child, you're looking in your surroundings and you're moving from place to place, and who is Jessika going to be here compared to who Jessika's going to be there? What is my friend group? Are they going to accept me? The intersectionality of not only being a military brat, but also being biracial in certain spaces and understanding, especially when you're around the globe, like understanding it looks and it feels different depending on the culture, but that shows up in your adult space, right? And so when you think about your journey within corporate America, your journey as you continue to launch something like your coaching company, to come over the next year and things like that. How have you leveraged those life lessons to make sure that you're showing up as a successful woman in corporate America and in consulting?
Yeah, I think it's a double-edged sword when I hear that question, and you'll probably like know exactly what I mean by this. But as someone who is a chameleon, like the source of that is I want to fit in, right? The driver, why is that burning like why are you doing the things that you're doing to make yourself a comforting kind of new connection for someone, or finding any point of relation or something that we have in common, even though you might look like, you know, a green Martian and I look like a purple alien. You know what I mean? Like crossing the divide, literally. And wanting to fit in has given me some of the best experiences. Obviously, being able to talk with senior leaders who, you know, might be white males from Buffalo. And that senior leader just happened to be one of the best bosses, the closest person I've ever, you know, worked with, who supports me and champions me. So it enables me to find commonalities with a figure like that, which I think a lot of times in corporate America, it's not just like how hard you work, but do you have that network that's going to say your name in the room when you're not there with the decision makers? And because I was able to find points of commonality, that person felt that it's like more than just, you know, him being my boss, but that person like has now invested in who Jessika will be right tomorrow. And so that has helped me, but I think like that's the positive side of the sword. The other life lesson that I'm still learning is that there's a other side of which you can be seen as a people pleaser.
That part.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's the part that I knew you would like understand, because when we're, you know, when we're people that like, we are easily befriended, we're easy to get along with, have, you know, drinks with, you know, we appeal to a lot of people. Like that to me is like almost to growing up in the suburbs. Like you mentioned, it's like, you know, you probably grew up in a very diverse, you know, region within Cleveland in the suburbs, but it's easy for you. But for some people who you meet along the journey, they might feel like, well, that's not genuine. Yes. Well, you're doing everything to appease others. And it's not just how other people look at you, which is like the life lesson I'm learning, is how can I show up to be genuine and intentional and not just doing this because I want this person to say, oh, Jess, she's so great.
It's great.
It is also, how do you feel about yourself? That is the biggest life lesson for me in moments where I am now feeling like I'm people pleasing or appeasing others and not staying true to like who I am authentically in that moment. If I don't want to go to the dinner and I'm not feeling mentally there, why am I putting on my makeup and like slugging through to go out? You know, like if I don't want to serve and lead the DE&I effort at the enterprise. Another one, you know,
don't even get me started there, but continue. Yeah,
like you want to do it, but you don't know. Like, why can I not say no?